General Secretary of NATO Mark Rutte, the statement of the President of Ukraine.
Thank you very much, and I wish everyone strong health. Mark, dear friend, I'm glad that today you are in Ukraine, with Ukraine. Dear teams, dear journalists, today we held a very important meeting for Ukraine, meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Council. This is a special format of our cooperation. This was a first meeting in such format in Kiev. This is truly historic, and it's important that this format helps focus our partners' attention on the key security priorities. First and foremost, air defense. What is needed most of all, protection against Russian missiles. We now have more opportunities to defend ourselves against cruise missiles, as the corresponding interceptor missiles are simply more available around the world, and it would help greatly if our partners focused particularly on protection against ballistic missiles. We've spoken a lot about it today. Ballistic missiles, which Russia has begun using more frequently and which are objectively much more difficult to shoot down. Ballistic missiles are Russia's last argument in this war against Ukraine, and we must find a sufficient response to them. We have so far one and only proven tool that works, and that is American-made Patriot systems. We are finding funding in Europe and from our other partners to purchase missiles for Patriots through Pearl program, and I want to thank all our partners, and I thank you personally, Mark. Thank you for ensuring that the Pearl program exists and that it continues and that it works. There were contributions in May, there were these contributions, and there will be contributions in June as well. And it is extremely important, and there are confirmations for this. But the pace of deliveries through Pearl and the volume of those deliveries are not sufficient, and it's also a fact. Additional steps are needed, and we discussed this today with the Secretary General. And in practical terms, there are 5 key areas for our further work. First, we must continue Pearl, undoubtedly, and engage with all countries that are capable of investing in this program more. In particular, today there were decisions from several countries. 6 countries have confirmed that they will make contributions to Pearl. We thank them a lot, thank them very much. We won't name the countries, and we won't name the names of, we won't name their contributions, but this is something that we can buy from the United States of America. Today, all of the countries reaffirmed that Pearl is a priority, just as our new format, drone deals. We're working with our partners to make this format fully effective. Second, Europe must move more quickly on developing its own anti-ballistic capabilities. All of us need it, and we're already working with some countries, France, Norway, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, Italy, and some other partners on building European anti-ballistic capabilities. It's a tremendously difficult project, but it's very much needed. We spoke with the previous administration of the United States, and we are speaking with the current administration regarding licenses for Patriot systems so that they can be produced in Ukraine or jointly with our NATO partners. This is a healthy way to increase our collective strength, and it aligns with President Trump's stated course that Europe should be able to do more for its own defense. We will remain focused on this effort, and I'm grateful to all partners who are helping convey this message to America, that we in Europe can produce what will help both Europe and America. Our allies, and this applies to Patriot systems first and foremost. I also thank all our partners who are already working with us on joint production and are helping with funds to expand weapons production in Ukraine. Today, Ukraine directs, as of today, around $45–50 billion per year toward weapons production. We have succeeded in reaching this high level in my view, funding for the armed forces of Ukraine is secured. We must ensure so sufficient level of financing both for production and for the military. And not only for today or for the coming years, but over the long term as well. This is an ambitious task and a very real, tangible security guarantee for Ukraine, for our people, and our independence. Sufficient defense funding. If anyone in Ukraine believes this comes easily or is some kind of gift from the sky, they should not be mistaken. 24/7 we're working to provide Ukraine with this unprecedented level of funding in our history. 50 billion a year for weapons production alone across all types of weapons, Ukrainian-made weapons. This is a lot of money. Negotiating, persuading, finding the right volume of financing. This is what we do, and our partners are helping us. And I once again thank Secretary General for this. Many things come to fruition thanks to personal contacts and mutual understanding, of course. And I'm grateful to everyone who speaks with one voice with us and helps communicate our needs to our partners, and I'm grateful to all partners who are helping us. Mark and I also discussed several ideas that could provide Ukraine with stronger long-term financial security guarantees. We will be working both at the G7 summit and at the NATO summit in Ankara, which is a very important summit, and I'm grateful to Mark for the invitation to this summit. We will be present at this summit for sure, and we will keep working to ensure that our financial guarantees have real substance behind them. Now is not yet the time to fully disclose our ideas, but ensuring Ukraine's long-term resilience, financial resilience guarantees, is an obvious task. We know with which countries we must engage to deliver results. And I would like to reiterate my thanks to the representatives of NATO countries to say thank you to everybody who was present here for your presence in Ukraine today. This format and this level of representation, especially after Russia's demand that all ambassadors leave Ukraine because of some corresponding threats of attacks. We've had so many ambassadors here today, all countries represented, and this is a clear signal that Europe, the United States of America, Canada, and all our partners are united in supporting Ukraine and in compelling Russia to end its asinine aggression. Pressure must work. Sanctions against Russia, our long-range capabilities, financial support for Ukraine, our political cooperation, and the determination of our partners to help Ukraine precisely when it's so much needed. All of this sends a signal to Russia that this war will bring it no results. All of this is a push toward diplomacy, and we very much hope that over the summer and autumn we'll be able to bring peace closer. Really, we want it, but a just and dignified peace for all Ukrainians. Thank you to everyone who's helping. Thank you, Mark, once again for this visit. Statement by the Secretary General of NATO. Glory to Ukraine.
Dear Volodymyr, thank you very much for the warm welcome. It is always good to see you and to be here in Kyiv. And this time, indeed, I also brought with me the whole North Atlantic Council for our historic first NATO-Ukraine Council meeting in Kyiv. This in itself sends a strong message of the enduring bond between NATO and Ukraine. It is important for us to be here, where Ukrainians, young and old, continue to stand together with courage and conviction that their freedom is worth fighting for. Russia's aggression continues unabated. They are bombarding civilians and civilian infrastructure. Russia is terrorizing the population. Mass missile and drone attacks to destroy and disrupt, and the constant threat of hypersonic strikes. All of this is taking, of course, a toll on the people of this country. and increasingly beyond your borders, as we saw just last week in Romania. The danger Russia continues to pose is real, and our resolve in defending ourselves and continuing to support Ukraine in the face of this threat is unshaken. Russia's recklessness is not new. But as Ukraine continues to stand strong, to innovate and to make battlefield gains, Russia is increasingly desperate. Russia's losses are substantial, over 30,000 per month. This means losing more men in 1 month than the Soviet Union did in 10 years in the 1980s in Afghanistan. Absolutely staggering numbers. I have to say something here, but I need to say it to young Russians and their families. You are being sold a raw deal. Men like you who join the fight, you won't be trained. The equipment they'll provide you is substandard. There is a very high chance you'll die or be wounded while you're out there. And the odds are that if you are wounded, you will be left to suffer in the mud and die. So when we talk about tens of thousands of Russian casualties, that's not abstract. That will probably be you. Meanwhile, we know Russia's economy is under serious strain. Even with some temporary relaxing of sanctions due to oil shortages, Russia cannot compensate for the toll their war is taking on their battered finances. The pressures meant to bring Russia to the negotiating table, to end this terrible war that they started over 4 years ago. But tragically, they are showing no signs of stopping. The most recent attacks on Kiev and across Ukraine make that clear. More civilian lives lost, so many wounded, so much damage done. We strongly condemn Russia's aggression and continue to call for a negotiated peace. And here, for Volodymyr, it's clear that you are really pressing for peace. At the same time, we are also clear-eyed about the need to continue our support for Ukraine. And that's why I'm here today in Kiev along with all 32 NATO allies. This is a strong sign of NATO's continued commitment to our partnership, of our persistent support for Ukraine, and the value of our cooperation. We talk today about the challenges Ukraine faces, the support you need, what allies are delivering, and also how we can continue to learn from and support each other. And we discussed how Ukraine is successfully changing the dynamics on the battlefield. One of the ways in which we support Ukraine is with the Pearl program, through which NATO provides Ukraine with essential US equipment paid for by allies and partners. Indeed, this includes, as you said, the critical air defense that Ukraine needs to protect against the Russian ballistic missiles that continue to target civilian infrastructure across this country. Allies and partners have now pledged nearly $6 billion in US dollars to Ukraine through Pearl, and that support will continue. And Pearl is just one avenue through which allies support Ukraine. Others also continue, including through our command in Wiesbaden, Germany, the Czech Ammunition Initiative, and many more. We continue to work together and to learn from each other in the context of drone and counter-drone technology and tactics. And we are seeing more and more direct cooperation among defense industries, pairing Ukrainian ingenuity with investors and industrial know-how across the alliance, both for you on the battlefield today and also for allies tomorrow. And all of this is an investment in freedom and security. Freedom and security for Ukraine, freedom and security for NATO. Dear Volodymyr, thanks again for having us here today. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
Героям слава.
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
Переходимо до запитань. Будь ласка, перше запитання 1+1.
We now move on to the Q&A session. And first question, 1+1, please.
Дякую за можливість. Олена
Thank you for this opportunity, Elena Chernykova. 1+1. My first question is directed to both of you at once. Why are we facing such tremendous deficit of PAC-3 missiles? Is this financing in the first place, lack of financing, or lack of the missiles, the interceptors themselves, because of the high demand for them and the war in Iran? So in other words, these new 6 contributions that were announced, will they help us receive PAC-3 missiles in the near future? And Mr. President, well, I must ask you this question today. You've met with chiefs of some institutions regarding the defense contracts, and you have set a deadline that 1 week and either you'll have ready contracts or there will be personnel decisions. So could you please share who did not do their job and why we did not receive certain weapons? Thank you.
Shall I start? Yeah, so, let's first agree that this is crucial stuff, these PAC-2, PAC-3 interceptors. And, of course, you always want the overall volume to be bigger than it is. The good news is that the flow continues from the US into Ukraine each day, each week of these crucial interceptors to make sure that Russian attacks on civilian infrastructure and innocent people in this country, that the attacks, unluckily they still can be successful, we know, but in many cases you guys are able to intercept these incoming missiles. The good news is that the missile flow continues, the money is there. Today also many allies committed to pay into the program, which is absolutely crucial. But of course, you always have a risk that intense military operations will have influence on the stocks. But this is not having, and that's the good news, an immediate impact on Pearl now. Maybe somewhere in the future, but not now. And here the President was right. We are doing everything to make sure the production is ramped up, to make sure that whatever we still have in our stocks in Europe and the US, we are able to supply, and where we can find new ways of defending ourselves. And Ukraine is taking initiatives here together with European allies and our allies all over the NATO alliance. We will do that.
Дякую, Марк. Дякую за запитання.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for the question. Well, first and foremost,
Ракет ПАК-3 – це
PAC-3
не новина.
missiles deficit is
Отримали від наших партнерів
no big news. We've
ракети ПАК-3 в відповідній кількості, а потім в рази ця кількість на
We've been receiving PAC-3 missiles from our partners, and then at one point that the quantity just decreased rapidly, and we were working all together, and I thank Mark and everybody, we started to buy these missiles, and so the issue was no longer about financing. We were finding the money, but nonetheless the volumes were restricted since the beginning of the war in the Middle East, and this was reflected not only with PAC-3 and PAC-2, it was reflected with other weaponry as well. War was changing technologically, and we were replacing some of the weapons in deficit with our internal production. What we did not succeed in replacing were PAC-3 missiles, and then we made a decision to look for them everywhere. We concluded drone deals with various countries, and undoubtedly there were open agreements and closed agreements regarding anti-ballistic capabilities, so that the partners that were receiving something from Ukraine could provide Ukraine with something in return, something so that we could intercept Russian ballistic threats in 2022 and in 2025, and now I'm coming from the first question to the second question. An agreement and a possibility came up that we could arrange with our American partners new systems, new Patriot systems, and I can't disclose the number of systems, and a relevant number of missiles for these systems. The queue for PAC-2 and PAC-3 for Patriot systems is measured in years.
І тому,
And therefore,
цей новий пакет ми
to be
могли
honest,
отримати
we-
приблизно з 30-го року.
we
Це не влаштовувало
could
мене, не
receive
влаштовувало
this
нашу
package
команду. Ми
starting in
проговорили,
2030,
що ми
and
можемо
this did not
прийти,
satisfy me and my
що ми
team, and we were talking through
домовились з
alternatives
тими
we
чи
could
іншими
find, and
країнами про зміну
i.e.
черги.
arrangements with certain countries to change the order when this or that particular country could give us their position in line and we could take it.
Якщо ви проплатили контракт.
But you can take your place in this line if you have paid for your contract, and we must pay for
Ми
it.
розраховували тільки на партнерські гроші.
If we were counting only on partner financing, but it did not come at that point to finance that package, or if we're counting on European money
Тому повинні
based on frozen assets, but it's still not there, then we must do our best, do everything we can, but pay
ці системи
this
ракети
contract. Otherwise, these systems will arrive in 2030. So this is my quite elaborated answer. I'm not naming the countries we've reached agreement with, but I'm saying that we have this opportunity. I know that it's difficult, but Ministry for Foreign Affairs, National Security and Defense Council, Ministry of Defense, it's their obligation to realize this, because this means security for our state. And if the volumes of financing from partners do not flow in sufficient numbers, then we must find this money, no matter where, because to find Patriots and to find this place in line is more difficult. So this is my motion here. And next question, please, Bloomberg.
Дякую, Сафронова Леся, Bloomberg.
Thank you, Lisa Safronova, Bloomberg. Thank you for the opportunity to ask this question. So, in your speech, Mr. President, and in the speech of Secretary General, a fact was voiced that now the U.S. remains a cornerstone to resolving the Patriot supply issue and security of Ukraine issue. So, against this backdrop, are you perhaps planning meetings with envoys of American administration? Maybe they will reach Kyiv finally. Maybe you're planning meetings on the margins of G7 and NATO summits. And if yes, what do you expect from these meetings and from the negotiations with President Trump?
Do you, from your side, plan to talk to Trump or his administration and somehow depict him the situation in Ukraine and the situation with the physical lack of Patriot system, not only for Ukraine but the whole world as well, and Europe? Thank you.
Could I start? Because can I defend the US here? Because the United States, I believe, is doing what it can in terms of delivering PAC 3 and PAC 2 Patriot missiles to Ukraine. I really believe that, based on all the evidence I have. And whatever they can supply, they do. The money is there. So I go with my team cap in hand amongst European and Canadian allies to get the money. We are successful at that. I would love to see a little bit more of a better burden sharing. It is a couple of allies doing the heavy lifting, but okay, that's my problem. For Ukraine, it is important that the money is there for the interceptors to get them from the United States. The United States keeps on providing them. The US is also still providing all the critical intelligence to Ukraine. So I really want to defend the US here. The problem, of course, here, as the President was saying, is the production rate. So the President, I know myself, we are also in contact with the manufacturers of this equipment. I know the American President is. Not only because of Ukraine, but more generally in NATO. We need to produce more in terms of defense industrial output. The President has been forcing the American companies to quadruple their overall, not only Patriot interceptors, but overall quadruple the defense industrial output. And I met one of these CEOs after they had a meeting in the White House. He was still trembling. So I think the President had been quite forceful there. And I know this President is quite forceful and also discussing with industry. So I think we are all doing what we can. In the meantime, the good news is that this flow of interceptors from the US, despite the war in the Middle East, is continuing. But of course, what we have to make sure is that also longer term, Ukraine has what it needs now and in the middle and longer term, also with a view of next winter, to defend yourself. Because this is what the Russians are doing. It is cowardly attacking your cities and your infrastructure because they cannot win this on the front line. They know that because you are so successful in maintaining the front line. So they are now doing this. They are not successful in demoralizing this country. They will not because you are staunch. But hey, them doing this in this cowardly way still forces us to make sure that the impact is as small as possible.
We are really in constant touch with American side regarding our negotiators. We are expecting the negotiating group, but in my opinion, it's taking too long. Unfortunately, we are now not in the focus, and I think that Iran is nowadays number one issue for America, and then comes Ukraine. So we are in this queue of wars, and I sincerely believe that the United States of America is the strongest country that can compel Putin to end his war, and that's why I've always emphasized that the best option for us is that the US is engaged and Europe's engaged, because without place for Europe, without European presence at the negotiating table, we simply cannot be sure that Europe will be heard and that Europe will not feel that something depends on them. But for us, it's important that they do, because we're a future member of the EU, and it's important that Europe is within this process. I truly believe that the strongest option is the United States of America and representatives of Europe, not only the EU, but in a broader sense, representing Europe, be at the negotiating table. But just as I have said, number one for us is to end the war. And there are no alternatives here, which is why I've been saying very openly that we support any format, and I'm ready for direct negotiations with Putin to end this war, rather than wait in line while everybody finishes all of the conflicts in the world, and then our turn comes. Thanks God. What Mr. Secretary General has said now, and it's absolutely true. Thanks God. Because of our armed forces, we now feel our strength on the battlefield. We have gained a lot of successes in deep strikes. 1,100, and this is not a single, not an outlier. It was a concrete result. So today we have such concrete security guarantees that allow us on equal footing with the Russians in any format of diplomacy to end this war.
Будь ласка, наступне запитання «Європейська правда».
Next question, Европейская правда.
I have a question, first of all, to Sergeant. That's why I would ask in English. But of course, if Ukrainian president would like to add, I would be happy to hear. Sergeant, you have definitely heard from Ukraine plenty of times that we don't want to compromise, that we cannot compromise on our goal to join NATO. I believe you could also hear that today. What do you see? Is that still valid for NATO? Or, how do you see? Are we still a country which is about to join? And do you still think that Ukrainian armed forces need to change something in its interoperability, or we are already there? What should Ukraine do? Or it's only on NATO side? And let me also ask on Romania, which you have already mentioned today. Romanian authorities and officials say that they cannot shoot drones approaching Romanian border, like when drones are still on Ukrainian territory, because it should be a NATO decision to do so. Is that like that, or are there any discussions to start shooting drones outside of NATO territory? Because Ukraine is ready to provide that approval. Пане президенте, ви будете особисто в Анкарі? Можна?
Now, Mr. President, are you going to be present in Ankara in person?
Well, first of all, on NATO, as you know, there is the political and the practical. So, allies have been very clear, and this was last time reconfirmed in the NATO summit at the occasion of the 75th birthday of the alliance, that there is this irreversible path of Ukraine into NATO. The practical is that at the moment there's no unanimity on that. So again, then to look at it from a practical perspective, what we are seeing now is that the Ukrainian armed forces are more and more interoperable with NATO. What we are seeing is that when it comes to the standards, we are more and more using the same standards. When it comes to our industry, it's more and more interconnected. We are learning from Ukraine as NATO when it comes to drone and counter-drone technology. And NATO still, when it comes, for example, to fighting a war in the air and other aspects of warfare, we can still help Ukraine in that area. So we can still help each other. A lot is happening, and more Ukraine is integrated, let's say, in sense of interoperability and standards with NATO. But when it comes to the full NATO membership, the honest answer there is that at the moment there is no unanimity on that. That's not new, that's already the case for some time. When it comes to Romania, as you know, I reacted to this before. NATO stands in solidarity with Romania. Our thoughts are also, my personal thoughts are, of course, with those injured in the attack. We launched Eastern Sentry in September after incursions in Estonian airspace and Polish airspace, which is basically bringing together all the allied capabilities from up to the high north and down, including to the Black Sea. The Superior Allied Commander and his team are constantly assessing where there are gaps we have to fill, how we can fill them, how we can to make sure that we can, as we do, defend every inch of NATO territory.
Пан президенте, щось.
Треба? Що саме? Сьогодні багато країн...
What should I add? Well, many countries have been speaking today about the desire to see Ukraine a NATO member country. I think the majority of them. Not one single person said they don't want that. At least publicly they wouldn't say that. And General Secretary was quite open about that. When it comes to UN NATO membership, unanimity is required. When it comes to the EU membership, we do see this unanimity. When it comes to NATO, not yet. But
Ну, я думаю, що це
well, I think
НАТО. Більшість країн дійсно розуміють.
Most of NATO allies understand that NATO needs Ukraine as much as Ukraine needs NATO. It's probably a long talk. We could spend some time talking that. I think even Russians need Ukraine in NATO because it can be painful for them if Ukraine isn't in NATO. That's it.
Останнє запитання, будь ласка, France
And
Press.
the last question, France Press.
Yes, one more.
Sorry, apologies.
No.
We want to go to lunch. No, please.
Fair enough.
Please.
So do we, I think. Sorry. I just wanted to talk about the long-range strikes. We're seeing Ukrainian drones reach into Russia constantly at this point. I wanted to know, Mr. Secretary General, what was your position, especially since Ukrainian drones are sometimes flying over NATO countries? Is that something that you've discussed with President Zelensky? Are you encouraging Ukraine to continue the strikes? And for President Zelensky, specifically, if you could comment on today's strikes on the day of the Economic Forum, what's the signal, what symbol are you guys trying to send?
Well, Ukraine is now so successful that Putin is only able to organize a 9th of May parade with an official presidential decree by this president. So this is basically how far you got. And I think for 2 hours you allowed him to do it. And to then end it in 1 hour 55 minutes. So he didn't take a risk. But putting that aside, I think Ukraine is increasingly successful, both when it comes to the front line, but also when it comes to making sure you are able to take out some of the key capabilities and capacities of the Russians to continue with the war. When it comes to sometimes incursions into NATO airspace. Let's not forget where it started. This started with Russia's reckless war of aggression against Ukraine, starting in March 2014 and then followed up in late February 2022 with the full onslaught. So whenever that happens, that's what is behind it. And everybody in NATO realizes this, and we know that Ukraine will do everything to minimize the impact.
В Латвію
Well, as regards Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and Romania, I think we've agreed with them to prepare experts. There are dates already identified for them to come out there to share the experience, much in the way they did in the Middle East. This will also help to prevent further challenges, if these come to be the kind of challenges they've been witnessing because of drones in the aspects of relevant countries. We will be helping them with interceptors, with our knowledge. Now, as regards, I think you asked about something else.
If you could comment, I know you have on social media.
About
the
Petersburg.
yes, please.
Чесно кажучи, я не слідкую, у мене немає програмки, куди Путін.
I'm not tracking Putin's itinerary every day. We are just responding to the strike against Ukraine. I think we've been justified with our strikes.
Була масована атака, ми відповіли.
24 hours ago, we had a massive attack and we responded. But we do respond exclusively against oil refineries or justified military targets. They need to understand that if they continue using drones and missiles against us, we will be doing the same. It's also a matter of time when we will be able to scale up our response.
Тепер все. Дякую. На цьому прес-конференція.
Thank you. The press conference is over.
All my papers.